The champagne flute slipped from my mother's hand, shattering against the marble floor of the ballroom. 50 pairs of eyes turned in my direction just as Captain Laura Bennett stepped through the crowd. Her tactical boots echoed sharply with each step. She didn't flinch, didn't salute. Just said 3 words, Director Walsh's orders. My brother Evan, mid-toast with a glass of aged scotch, froze like a statue. The color drained from his face. For 28 years, they'd called me Jenny. Jenny, the wandering soul. Jenny, the law school dropout. Jenny, the one who couldn't quite get it together. They had no idea I'd spent the last 10 years hunting terrorists in the shadows. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really began. The old house on Chestnut Lane looked exactly the same. White picket fence, rose bushes climbing up the porch rails, and the brass nameplate that still read Callahan, my father's handiwork, neat and polished. I'd been gone 3 years this time. The longest stretch yet. The rental car's engine ticked quietly as it cooled in the driveway. Through the big front window, I could see everyone gathered inside for Evan's promotion party. My younger brother, now vice president of some hotshot tech startup, was at the center of the room like he always had been. My parents stood close by, glowing with pride. My sister Megan was live streaming it all to her social media fans. A picture-perfect family, minus their missing piece. I stepped out of the car and took a deep breath. Then walked up the path and through the front door. No one screamed or cried or rushed to hug me. The room didn't fall silent, it just shifted. Like someone turned the volume knob on Joy a few clicks lower. Jenny, my mother said, her voice lined with forced brightness. You actually came. Not, I'm so glad you're here, not, we've missed you, just, surprise. My father barely looked up from his paper. Thought you were in Thailand. Or was it Tibet? Neither, I replied quietly. I was in D.C., Evan laughed from across the room. Not hearing the steel in my voice. What, taking a meditation retreat on the National Mall? Still finding yourself, how little sis? Laughter trickled through the crowd. Soft, polite. They thought I was a joke. A walking cautionary tale. The bright kid who cracked and floated off on a cloud of crystals and incense. If only they knew that just 3 days earlier, I'd been in a command center 5 stories underground, helping coordinate a joint task force op. That my retreat was a top-level classified briefing on domestic terror threats. That while they were uploading family photos to Instagram, I was chasing down chemical weapons smugglers through 5 time zones and 3 fake passports. But I'd taken an oath. One that didn't allow for explanations. 4 goodbyes. 4 truth. That oath demanded I let them believe I was a nobody. That night, I found myself in the basement again. The old pull-out couch still creaked the same way it had in high school. The air smelled like dust and time. My track trophy sat on a shelf, cloaked in cobwebs. Debate medals still hung on crooked nails. Echoes of a girl who hadn't existed in years. Then my secure phone buzzed, a text from Agent Celeste Hart, Black Lake situation escalating. Need you in 48 hours, Operation Black Lake. 6 months of intelligence. 3 terrorist cells. A planned attack that would make 9/11 look like a warning shot. I was the only one who knew the whole picture. The only one who could see the pattern, and my family thought I was nothing. The next morning, I woke to find Megan sitting on the basement steps, laptop in her lap, earbuds in. She was pecking away at the keyboard, totally zoned out. Hey, I said, stretching. What are you working on? She popped out one earbud. Oh, some boring article about federal agents who never get recognition. Unsung heroes, you know? Someone sent me this encrypted file. Probably just some conspiracy nut trying to sound important. She laughed like it was nothing. My heart stopped. Megan. What file? She turned the screen toward me. There it was, an intelligence summary from Operation Granite. My first major case. The one that had forced me off the grid and deep undercover. The one still under lock and key. Where did you get this? She shrugged. Some email account, Silent Watcher 42 or something like that. Why? You know anything about it? I knew everything about it. Because I'd lived it, and if she had it, that meant someone had found me, someone who knew exactly how to draw me out. I didn't have time to explain. I grabbed my gear, jumped in the car, and started tracing the email. It led me to a coffee shop downtown, the kind with chalkboard menus and endless jazz. In a corner booth, my laptop hummed as I ran traces and protocols. And then I saw it, the encryption signature. A very specific one. I'd seen it once before in a file marked Eyes Only, back in 2019, the sender, former Deputy Director Martin Raines, the same man who vanished 3 months ago before his scheduled testimony, the same man suspected of selling secrets to foreign enemies. He wasn't dead. He was baiting me, and now, he was using my family as leverage. I called Celeste. We've got a problem, I told her. Raines resurfaced. He's targeting my civilian identity. You need to come in. Now. I can't. He's got my sister involved. If I vanish, she becomes a loose end. Silence. Then she said, finish it. That night, Evan's official promotion gala was set at the Charleston Grand Hotel. Black tie event. Local politicians. CEOs. Cameras. The perfect stage. I almost didn't go, but then I realized, it was the only chance I had to finish this clean. I showed up late on purpose, slipped in through the rear staff entrance of the Charleston Grand, just as the string quartet finished some overpolished Vivaldi. The ballroom shimmered, crystal chandeliers, tuxedos, evening gowns, and the clink of expensive silverware on fine china. I wore black. Simple, sleek. Professional. Not flashy. The kind of dress that let me disappear into a crowd, or walk through it with purpose. Evan stood on the raised platform, a gold-trimmed banner behind him. Congratulations, Vice President Callahan. He was giving a speech about grit and persistence, the usual cliches about never giving up on your dreams. His smile was movie star wide, polished just right for the cameras. I found a spot in the back, blending into a cluster of servers clearing appetizer trays. My eyes scanned the room, every exit, every staff member, every unfamiliar face, and that's when I saw him, Martin Raines, dressed like hotel security, standing by the service door, holding a two-way radio. His posture was off, too rigid. And he didn't blink much. Our eyes met, he smiled, then he reached for the radio mic. Up on stage, Evan said into the microphone, I'd like to thank everyone who supported me on this journey. Especially my parents, my sister Megan, and even Jenny, who's... well, she's here somewhere. Probably taking pictures of the centerpieces for her travel blog. The crowd chuckled. A few people glanced around the room looking for me. That old familiar burn crept up my throat. Laughter. Not in celebration, at my expense. Even now, I was still the joke. The one who didn't quite measure up. That's when the ballroom doors burst open. Captain Laura Bennett entered first. Behind her, a full tactical response team swept in, body armor, radios, sidearms. Not local police. Federal agents. My agents. The room rippled with gasps, chairs scraping back, conversations dissolving into murmurs. Bennett didn't stop. She walked directly through the ballroom, ignoring the stares and whispers, until she reached me. She stood 3 feet away. Turned to face the room. Her voice was clear and sharp, cutting through the chaos like a blade. Director Walsh, perimeter is secure. What are your orders? Silence. You could have heard a pin drop, or, more accurately, a champagne glass hit the floor. Which it did. Again. My mother, standing near the front table, dropped her drink. It shattered like the first one. Her hand covered her mouth. Her eyes were wide. Everyone's were. Evan froze at the microphone, staring at me like he was seeing a ghost. Director. What is she talking about? I looked at Bennett, then my family, then at Martin Raines, who had begun edging toward the exit. Take him down, I said quietly. Martin Raines. Suspected of espionage and treason. He's been using my family to get to me. The tactical team moved like a wave, silent, fast, coordinated. They fanned out around guests, over chairs, past stunned waiters. Rains didn't fight. He raised his hands slowly as they zip-tied his wrists. "You can't hide in the shadows forever, Jenny," he said, smirking as they led him away. "They'll never really see you." I stepped forward, my heels sharp on the marble. "You're right," I said. "But they don't need to see me. They just need to know someone's watching." The room buzzed with confusion. Whispers grew louder. Cameras flashed. I could feel the moment breaking open like a fault line. Bennett leaned in and whispered, "We've got a secure room upstairs if you want to debrief your family." I nodded. "Yeah. They deserve the truth." The hotel cleared a side conference room for us. No reporters. No onlookers. Just me, my parents, Evan, and Megan. I sat across from them, suddenly feeling like a teenager again, awkward, out of place. "Except this time, I wasn't hiding. I know this is a lot," I began. "And none of it makes sense yet. But I need you to understand something. I never really left. I never gave up. I just became someone else." My dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 1 hour. My mom was pale, clutching a tissue like a lifeline. Megan just stared at me, slack-jawed. "You're saying you work for the government?" My dad finally asked. "I work in counterterrorism," I said. "I've been undercover for the last 8 years." I reached into my bag and placed a slim leather folder on the table. Inside were my credentials, federal ID, director badge, the official letter of assignment signed by the Secretary of Homeland Security, everything you thought about me, the dropout, the wandering trips, the silence, it was all part of my cover. "I couldn't tell you. I was protecting you by letting you believe I'd failed." Megan blinked. "That file. The one I got. That was you?" I nodded. "That was my first mission. Operation Granite. We stopped a biochemical attack planned for downtown Portland. Estimated casualties, 12,000. It was classified. Still is." Evan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "So all this time, we thought you were the family disappointment. The one who couldn't keep a job or a purpose." "But you were," I interrupted, gently. "I was keeping a different kind of promise." My mother started to cry, not quiet, dainty tears. Not the kind she shed at weddings or charity events. These were heavy, gut-wrenching sobs. She covered her face, shoulders shaking. "We were so cruel," she whispered. "We made fun of you. Judged you. I said awful things. We all did." "You didn't know," I said softly. "And you couldn't know. That's the burden I chose. And I don't regret it. But now you do know." My father stood up slowly. Walked around the table. He didn't say a word. Just wrapped his arms around me, a real hug. Not the quick, side-lean pat I was used to. But a full embrace. "I'm proud of you," he said, voice thick. "Not because of the job. But because you stayed true. Even when we didn't see it." And in that moment, I felt something shift, not in them, in me. The next morning, the Charleston Gazette ran a front-page headline, "Local Woman Leads Federal Operation, Details Classified." The article was vague. No names. No agency. Just enough to signal that Jenny Callahan wasn't just the drifting sibling who disappeared every few years. Enough to make people wonder. Enough to change the way they looked at me. Megan used her journalism contacts to push a deeper story. She published a piece about the mental and emotional toll faced by undercover agents, the kind of story that asked the hard questions. About what it means to live in silence. About the families who never know what they're sacrificing. Her article didn't name me either. But it didn't have to. It went viral. Shared across networks, picked up by national blogs. Comment sections lit up with people saying, "This reminds me of my brother," or "My aunt was in the CIA. We didn't know till she died." And suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. Evan stopped calling me the flighty one. At social functions, he started introducing me as Jenny, who works in national security. He didn't know the details, but he didn't need to. Something in his tone changed. A weight had been lifted. Maybe even respect. And my parents? They framed the group photo of my tactical team, our official team portrait, taken right after Operation Blacklake. It sat proudly on the mantel now, right between Evan's promotion plaque and Megan's journalism award, for the first time. It felt like a complete picture. 3 weeks later, I was back in Washington. The high-ceilinged halls of our downtown headquarters were as sterile as ever, neutral walls, soft buzzing fluorescents, and the ever-present scent of burnt coffee. I walked into the conference room to find Deputy Director Alan McBride waiting, flipping through a thick file folder. He looked up. "Well, Agent Callahan, scratch that, Director Callahan. Quite the homecoming you had in Charleston." I sat down. "Wasn't exactly planned." He pushed the folder across the table. "Martin Raines is in federal custody. He's already lawyered up, but we've got enough to bury him under a prison, thanks to your work." I opened the file. Photos, reports, decrypted communications. All of it, the breadcrumb trail that led from Megan's inbox to the ballroom. "Your cover's gone," he continued. "Too much exposure. The arrest. The media. The viral article. We can relocate you. Give you a new identity. Start over somewhere else." He didn't have to say the rest. New name. New town. New lies. "And if I don't want to disappear again?" I asked. "We promote you," he said. "Section Chief. Counterterrorism Division. You'd be public-facing. No more fieldwork. No more shadows. But you'd be a leader. Visible. Official." I stared at the badge resting in my palm. It had weight. Not just physical, but emotional. Symbolic. I thought about the basement couch. About hearing my own brother joke about my travel blog. About the years of holidays I'd missed. Weddings. Funerals. The burden of secrecy was heavy, but not nearly as heavy as being invisible. Then I thought about my mom's tears. My dad's hug. Megan's fierce defense of my work in her article. "I'll take the promotion," I said. McBride gave a small smile. "Welcome back, Director Callahan." 6 months later, I found myself back in Charleston. This time, not for a mission. Not for a crisis. Megan was getting married. She'd asked me to walk her down the aisle. Not Dad. "Me, I want people to see you," she'd said, "the way I finally do." I arrived at the wedding venue early, no back entrance this time. I walked through the front doors in full dress uniform. My medals gleamed. My boots polished. My hair pinned just right, and this time. The conversations didn't stop when I entered the room. They didn't pause in awkward silence either. People smiled. Nodded. Reached out to shake my hand. One woman, a local school principal, leaned in and whispered, "Thank you for your service." A retired Navy vet clapped me on the back and said, "It's good to see someone who still stands for something." And then came David, Megan's fiancé. A bright-eyed lawyer with a strong handshake and a nervous smile. "It's an honor to meet you, Director Callahan," he said. "Megan's told me so much about your work. I mean, not everything, but enough to know I should be grateful." I smiled. "You're marrying my sister. I should be the one asking questions." He laughed, then sobered. "I'll take care of her. I promise." "I know you will." Later that evening, Evan raised a glass. The room was filled with family, friends, and new in-laws. "To my sister Jenny," he said, "who taught us that some of the most important battles are fought in silence. And that sometimes, the strongest people are the ones who never ask to be seen." The crowd clinked glasses. I looked around, at my mother beaming, at my father wiping his eyes, at Megan standing proud beside her husband, and I felt whole. The girl who used to sneak out of family parties was now the woman they toasted. The secret I carried for so long was no longer mine alone. It had been shared, understood, respected, and more than anything, I was finally seen. It's strange. Really, how quickly people can rewrite the story of you once they're handed the truth. For years, I'd been the missing daughter, the ghost in every holiday photo, the whispered topic of conversation whenever someone asked, "So what's Jenny doing these days?" Now? I was the one people sought out at dinner parties. I was the one Evan introduced with a smile, saying, "My sister? Oh, she's kind of a big deal in national security." They didn't need to know the details, they just needed to know I mattered. I didn't expect the shift to feel so heavy. Recognition, respect, those things should have felt like reward. But they came with something I wasn't quite prepared for: grief, not for the years I'd spent in the field. I never regretted the missions, the operations, the close calls. What I grieved was what I'd had to become to do it all: a stranger, to the world, to my family, to myself. One afternoon in late spring, I was back in D.C., standing in front of my office window, watching the city breathe, sirens in the distance, choppers crossing the river, the rhythm of the Capitol never slowing. My assistant knocked. "Director Callahan, you've got a visitor." "Says it's personal." I turned, and there stood Megan, hair pulled into a bun, blazer over jeans, notepad in hand. "I brought lunch," she said, holding up a brown bag. "Hope you still like egg salad." I smiled. "From Kozlo's? Where else?" We sat in my office, windows open, oldies playing softly from the radio, Dad's kind of music. She didn't pepper me with questions this time. Just let the silence sit between us. "I was thinking about that file I got," she said finally. "The first one. From that fake email. I've reread it a dozen times. All the redactions, the codenames, the operation summaries. Jenny, you saved lives." "I tried," I said. "Sometimes, it wasn't enough." She nodded slowly. "Do you regret it? Any of it?" I looked out the window. Did I? Not the missions. Not the lies, they were necessary. But I regretted the gap that had grown between me and the people who mattered. The birthday parties I missed. The panicked late-night calls I couldn't return. The way my mother used to say, "Well, she'll come back when she figures herself out." "I regret what it cost you," I said. She blinked. "It didn't cost me anything. You protected us." I gave a small smile. "And I'd do it again." Megan reached into her bag and handed me an envelope. "They want to give you an award. Civilian Service Medal. High honors. Public ceremony. Press, photos, everything." I paused. "That's a lot." "You earned it." I looked down at the envelope. Sealed in gold foil. Recognition had never been the goal. But maybe. Just maybe. It was time to stop hiding. "All right," I said. "I'll go." The ceremony took place 2 weeks later in a federal building downtown. Rows of suits and uniforms, news crews packed in the back. My tactical team showed up, standing proud in dress blues. When they called my name, I stepped up to the podium, lights flashed. The medal was pinned just below my collar. I gave a short speech, simple, direct. Thanked my team. Thanked the people who never stopped believing, even when I gave them every reason to. Afterward, a woman approached me. Mid-70s, sharp blazer, kind eyes. "I used to work for the agency," she said softly. "Back in the 80s. We couldn't even tell our husbands what we did." It means a lot, seeing someone finally get the credit. I shook her hand. "It's an honor to stand where others paved the way." She smiled. "Took us decades." "You? You broke that silence in one night." Her words stayed with me. "One night, back in Charleston, my mother called. You'll never believe what I found," she said. In the attic, she'd uncovered an old box from my high school years. Inside were debate medals, newspaper clippings, my acceptance letter to law school, even a journal I'd kept, full of quotes, scribbled plans, and dreams written in blue ink. She read one aloud. I want to do something that matters. Even if no one knows it was me. I laughed. That's still true, I said. There was a pause. You've always mattered, she said, voice tight. We just didn't know how to see it. That one sentence, that tiny sentence, healed something deep. A few days later, I was invited to speak at a university. Homeland Security students, future agents. I stood on stage, looking out over a sea of eager faces. Notebooks ready, phones recording. I told them about resilience, about silence, about what it costs to be invisible for the greater good. And then I said this: you might be asked to disappear. To let people think the worst of you. To carry truth alone. But if you do your job right, someone else gets to wake up tomorrow. Someone else gets to live their life in peace. That's the trade. And it's worth it. When I stepped off the stage, one of the students ran up to me. Her eyes were misty. My dad was an agent, she said. He died on a mission 10 years ago. We never really knew what he did. Just that he loved us enough to keep us in the dark. I hugged her. Some truths don't need to be explained. They just need to be honored. The thing no one tells you about coming into the light is that it doesn't fix everything. You don't magically get back the birthdays you missed, or the years you spent pretending to be someone you weren't. The silence might lift, but its echoes stay with you. Still, I was learning how to be visible. How to walk into rooms without a cover story. How to speak plainly, without second-guessing every word. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. One morning, about 6 months after the award ceremony, I was sitting at my favorite diner, corner booth, same waitress who always called me Han, hot coffee refilled every 15 minutes. I was reading through agency memos on a secured tablet when a voice cut in. Director Callahan? I looked up. A man stood by my table, early 50s, salt and pepper hair, dressed in business casual, but with a military posture he couldn't quite shake. Yes? He extended a hand. I just wanted to say thank you. My son's in the Air Force. He told me about what happened in Charleston. Said it changed the way some of the younger guys talk about the job. About what it really means to serve. I shook his hand. Tell your son he's the one making the difference now. He gave me a grateful nod and left. It hit me as I watched him go. I was no longer just part of the machine. I was someone people saw. Remembered. Respected, but with that came a new kind of weight. I couldn't disappear anymore. Later that month, I got a call from Agent Hart, Celeste. The same woman who'd texted me about Operation Blacklake. One of the few people who'd seen the full scope of what I'd done, and what I'd lost to do it. You still think about the ones we couldn't save? She asked, without preamble, every day. Me too. We didn't say more. Didn't need to. In our line of work, silence often said the most. One evening, Megan came by my place in D.C. She brought a bottle of wine and a box of old family photos she'd dug out of storage. We sat on the floor of my apartment, bare feet, bad lighting, laughter echoing off the walls. She held up a photo of us at the lake, me. Age 12, goggles on my forehead, arms crossed like I already knew I didn't belong. You always looked like you were waiting for something, she said. I was, I replied. I just didn't know what. She reached into her bag and pulled out a bound copy of her article, the one about unsung heroes. She'd turned it into a booklet, complete with a dedication page, for Jenny Callahan, who never stopped protecting us, even when we didn't deserve it. I couldn't speak, just hugged her, and for the first time, I let myself feel the ache. The good kind. The kind that says, you made it. At the next family gathering, things were different, not louder. Not more dramatic. Just real. My dad asked questions about my work, not the classified stuff, but the logistics. What a typical day looked like. How many people reported to me? Whether I missed the field. My mom, bless her, kept sneaking glances at me like she still couldn't quite believe it. Like she was trying to memorize this new version of me, strong, steady, visible. Evan cracked a joke about director boss lady. but it didn't sting like before. There was affection in it now. Pride. That night, after most of the guests had gone home, my father poured us both a glass of bourbon. He sat next to me on the porch swing and said, "You know, I always thought strength meant making yourself heard. Speaking up. Taking charge." He took a sip, "But watching you, I realized sometimes strength is doing what no one sees. Carrying things others can't. And never asking for credit." I looked at him. "That's not just strength, Dad. That's love." He nodded, and in that quiet moment, something settled between us. Not a fix. Not a rewrite of the past. But an understanding. The following week, I stood in front of a congressional subcommittee, briefing them on new threats and task force recommendations. Cameras lined the walls. Reporters scribbled notes. I kept my tone measured, my words clear. One of the congressmen asked, "Director Callahan, how do we prepare for enemies we can't see?" I paused. Then I said, "By trusting the ones who stay hidden to keep watching. And by remembering that just because someone's in the shadows doesn't mean they don't matter." The room went still for a moment, then nods. Murmurs. Approval. Afterward, one of the aides handed me a note. "Your story helped me find my own courage." "Thank you." No signature. Just that, and it was enough. 6 months later, I was back in Charleston again, this time, not for work, not for ceremony, but for something quieter. Something personal. Megan was expecting her first child. A little girl. They were naming her Grace. I stayed for a week, helping her set up the nursery. Evan dropped by almost every evening, bringing food and teasing Megan about all the parenting books stacked on the coffee table. Mom and Dad came over on Sundays, both somehow softer than I remembered. One evening, we all sat on the porch together, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and the distant hum of cicadas. My father passed around a photo album, one of the old ones, leather-bound and worn at the corners. There were pictures of us as kids. Birthday cakes. Swim meets. Christmas mornings. In almost every photo, I was in the background. Off to the side. Half smiling. Fading, but now my picture was on the mantle in every home. Not the Jenny they thought they'd known, but the woman they'd finally met. Director Jennifer Callahan. Not because of the title, but because they'd stopped looking through me, and finally saw me. That night, Megan and I sat on her porch long after the others had gone. "I've been thinking," she said, resting a hand on her growing belly, "about what I'll tell Grace someday. About you." I raised an eyebrow. "You gonna tell her I used to sneak out of church to climb the water tower?" She laughed. "Definitely. But also that her aunt is the kind of person who doesn't need recognition to make a difference. That there's honor in doing the right thing, especially when no one's watching." I looked out at the stars. They were faint, washed out by the glow of the town. But still there. "Just tell her the truth," I said. "That who you are matters more than who people think you are." Back in D.C., the job didn't slow down. Threats evolved. Tactics changed. My team grew. I led new agents, trained younger recruits. Passed along what I'd learned, but I also kept something for myself. On a shelf behind my desk sat 3 framed items: the family photo from Charleston, the one taken just after Megan's wedding, the civilian service medal, and a drawing Grace made me during her first visit to D.C., a stick figure woman in a cape labeled Auntie Jenny, secret hero. Sometimes, late at night when the office was quiet, I'd look at that picture and feel something I'd never really let myself feel before. Peace, because I knew I had walked through the shadows without losing myself, and in the end, I'd come home, not just to a place, but to people. There's something powerful about being seen, not for your failures, not for the roles people assign you, but for the truth of who you are. For years, I thought the mission was everything. That the only way to protect what mattered was to disappear from it. But I learned something else along the way. Visibility isn't vanity. It's healing. Sometimes, letting people see you is the bravest thing you can do. At Thanksgiving that year, Evan raised a glass at the dinner table. "To Jenny," he said. who reminded us that the quietest strength is often the most powerful. To family, Megan added. The kind that learns how to listen. How to forgive. How to grow. To Grace, my father said, raising his glass. Who'll grow up knowing her aunt is a real-life superhero. We laughed. We cried. We clinked glasses, and as I looked around the table, at the faces I loved, at the home I had fought so long to protect, I finally allowed myself to feel it, belonging, not because of a medal. Or a job title. Or a headline, but because they saw me now, not as the disappointment, not as the mystery, but simply, Jenny. And sometimes, that's the most heroic thing of all. There's something we rarely talk about, especially in families. It's not politics, not money, not even grief. It's the quiet ache of misunderstanding. The way we box each other in with labels we stopped questioning years ago. She's the smart one. He's the success story. She's the mess. And once those stories are written, we read them over and over again, until they become truth. But what if we're wrong? What if the person we gave up on was carrying more than we could see? What if their silence was strength? What if their absence was protection? Jenny Callahan's story isn't just about secret missions and federal agents. It's not about medals or classified folders or bringing down a traitor in a ballroom full of strangers. It's about being seen, and what it costs when you're not. She lived for nearly a decade in the shadows, by choice, yes, but also by necessity. And while she saved lives, led teams, and stopped unthinkable attacks, her family thought she was wasting her life. They laughed, dismissed her, called her the disappointment, and she let them, because sometimes protecting people means letting them believe you're nothing. Because explaining would mean putting them in danger. And because love, in its truest form, doesn't always need recognition, it just gives. But here's the part we can't ignore: eventually, even the strongest among us needs to be seen. Jenny's story teaches us this. We owe it to each other to look again, to ask better questions, to stop assuming, to consider that maybe the quietest person in the room is carrying the heaviest load. Maybe your sister didn't just drift away, maybe your son isn't lazy. Maybe that neighbor who never talks much has a story you couldn't begin to imagine. Because people don't always announce their battles, they just fight them, alone. So the next time you find yourself judging someone you think has lost their way or fallen behind or given up, pause, and ask yourself, do I really know their story? Or just the version that was easy to believe? As for Jenny, she didn't ask for applause, she never sought out the spotlight, but when the moment came, when the truth finally stood in the same room as all the people who had underestimated her, she didn't gloat. She didn't lash out, she simply stood in her truth, and that was enough. It changed her family, it changed how they saw her, and maybe most importantly, it changed how she saw herself. Because sometimes, the greatest victory isn't defeating the enemy, it's letting go of the lie that you were ever less than. So what's the takeaway? The world needs more Jennys, people who serve without needing credit, people who love without being praised, people who carry the weight so others can feel light. But the world also needs people who learn to see those Jennys, people who grow out of their assumptions, people who say, I was wrong. People who listen. If this story hit home for you, maybe because you are the quiet one. Or maybe because you know you've misunderstood someone in your life, take a moment, reach out, make a call, say what should have been said years ago. I see you now. I'm sorry I didn't before. Because being seen isn't just recognition, it's healing. Now we want to hear from you. Have you ever been misunderstood by the people closest to you? Or maybe, are you ready to see someone in your life with new eyes? Drop your story in the comments. Let's create a space where quiet heroes are honored, not overlooked. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. A sibling. A parent. A friend. Don't forget to like this video, it helps others find it too. Subscribe if you believe stories like this matter, and hit that bell icon so you never miss another reminder that the invisible deserve to be seen. Because this isn't just a family drama. It's a call to pay attention, to look again, to finally ask, what if the one we dismissed was the one holding us all together?